Hey everyone, it's Lexie. So in today's video, I'll be giving you some back to school reading recommendations. I, as a kind of have gone through many years of schooling, having gone through undergrad, a master's and a PhD, so I feel like I really just love that back to school feeling of buying new notebooks or school equipment, and then also kind of catering my books around school or school settings or like any sort of like academic settings. So these are books that I feel like have really great back to school vibes, whether they take place in school setting, have some sort of library aspect, or like something like that. So these are books that just kind of have that school vibe if you're going back to school, or if you want that back to school feeling like I said, like I'm kind of missing, then these are books that I feel like are perfect for you. Some of them are kind of dark academia, so just be aware of that. I'll talk about those ones in particular at the end, but without further ado, let's get started. So first up, I have a series that I read when I was like a middle schooler. So first up, this is a series that I feel like I grew up with. I remember starting to read it in like grade 6 or 7, and it went all the way until my first year of university. So this is one that I feel like I really grew up with, and I feel I did a reread of this a couple years ago and it holds up pretty well. I do have a video I'll link to where I kind of reread it, but it holds up really well, and it is the Gallagher series by Ali Carter. Like I said, this is one that I grew up with and it's near and dear to my heart, but it follows a group of friends who go to a spy school. I will say the kind of first 2 or so are kind of very much kind of, young girls that are like grades, 13, 14, 15, maybe 16 as you kind of follow them. But the first ones, I would say it's kind of similar to Harry Potter, where the first 2 or so are very much a little bit more juvenile, but the plot definitely becomes more adult and darker as the series progresses. So that was one thing that was good for me when I was reading this series, is that I kind of grew up as each book came out. I will say like the first one and this one doesn't really have, it's more of like, the day-to-day lives of these, preteen teenage girls that go to a spy school, but there's much more like overarching narrative or plot that kind of kicks in after the second book. So like I said, kind of go into that knowing it, but this is one that I feel like is really like I said, one of my favorite series of all time, just in general. So like I said, just know the first 2 books are kind of like a little bit more teeny boppery, but they definitely get more mature, more intense, really great subject matter, and I just was so attached to the characters, and I'm very glad that this is one that held up. Like I said, rereading it now as an adult. So I feel like this one just has the school feeling where they talk about classes, but having the little spy twist on them makes it feel interesting. So like I said, go into this, at least the first one, kind of knowing that it's a little bit different, but then you really kind of get into a really darker, more mature plot as the series progresses. So this is one that has a library vibe, and it is Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. This is one that is a fantasy book that is a standalone, and it follows this girl named Elizabeth who works at this very magical library, this very prestigious position, and she's kind of been told all her life that sorcerers or people with magic are evil. So when there is kind of this string of bad magic going around, she ends up getting caught in it, and it kind of goes off from there. There's also a little bit, I would say, kind of romance in this one. That's, I would say, that's more on the back burner. I wouldn't call this romantasy, but what is interesting is that there are these dark books that are turning into evil creatures, and she is kind of thrown into the midst of it, and she's trying to figure out why this is going on, what is happening, is there a plot or something bigger that is kind of brewing, and it kind of goes from there. This one just had a really good library vibe. Like, I tried the Atlas 6, I hated it, but I felt like the premise was so interesting, but it didn't really include I didn't feel like the library was very much like important or a part of the book. This is one where the library and books are very much kind of at the forefront. Having this kind of magical library with something kind of darker going on was just really interesting. This book is very action-packed as well, and it's nice too that it is a standalone, so you can get through it pretty quickly. But yeah, this is one that I said that's kind of, has that library vibe. I wouldn't necessarily call it dark academia, but it kind of gives off that library academic vibe. Next, this is kind of the dark academia section of the recommendations, and what better book to kind of kickstart us is kind of the book that I feel like really started the dark academia, genre, and it is A Secret History by Donna Tartt. This book was actually sent to me by a subscriber during the pandemic, so this is it is one of my favorite books. I remember reading this and really loving it, but it follows this student who is going to this really kind of pretentious school, and he really wants to be involved in this small cohort of students that are kind of studying the classics, that talk to each other in Greek and Latin, and he's very much kind of drawn to that that relationship and drawn to that group, but this book opens where there has been a murder of someone in the group, and they tell you who it is within like the first page or so, and so we know this is happens later on in the story. So the story follows kind of the events eventually leading up to that murder and then the fallout of it. So this book kind of really set that, I guess, like a theme, or kind of the tropes that are very much related to dark academia. This book really kickstarted it all. I feel like this is a book that everyone needs to read once, just in terms of how important this is in literature and for the dark academia genre in general. So like I said, this book was really fantastic. A lot of like the tropes that we really like, with kind of the not satirical, but kind of pointing out the darker side to academia, we can thank for this book. So this book is very important, and like I said, it kind of takes the kind of bright side of academia and kind of turns it on its head, and showing the darker sides of what that culture is like, what being a student and very engrossed in your studies is, and kind of talks about the darker side of academia. So this book, I think, is really important. Like I said, I feel like this is required reading for everyone. Next, this is one that has kind of that dark academia vibe, but it also, introduces a lot of other themes into it, and it is Babel by R.F. Kuang. I remember reading this book and being thoroughly engrossed in it. Basically, it follows this young boy who is taken from his family in, I want to say somewhere in Asia, but he's brought to, he's kind of orphaned, and then he's brought to London by this professor who sees value in him. So he trains him where these people can have they can use language in order to do some sort of not necessarily magic, but they can do kind of, I'm just looking here, but where they have to learn Latin, ancient Greek, and Chinese in order to be enrolled into Oxford. It's a very prestigious Royal Institute of Translation, which is called Babel. And so this is where you do silver working, the art of manifesting the meaning lost in translation, using enhanced silver bars to kind of do certain things. So there's a lot of value in having this skill. So not only this again kind of has those dark academia tropes, but it also integrates a lot of meaning behind colonialism, racism, all those things. So this is very loaded in terms of the message that is being broadcasted, but I think it's again very important read. It is quite chunky, but I think it's very important. It really kind of showcases kind of violence and academia and colonialism and all these things that are so interconnected. I feel like this was really well done, and the themes in here are definitely very important. And again, kind of to round out this video, I have If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. This is one I would say that is pretty similar in structure and kind of the tropes that are used to the Secret History. It's very similar to that. This one I think I maybe just slightly more than the Secret History, but I both think these books are quite fantastic. And this one follows a group of students that go to this I guess you could say art school, and they are part of the Shakespeare program. They are the same cohort, the same year, and they form again kind of these tight, toxic friendships with each other. In this case too, we get introduced to one of the characters who, this is 10 years after the events of this book, who is approached by the police because there was a murder that took place, and they don't believe they are getting the full story from this person. So as he's being released from prison, he is telling the police officers, you know, what actually happened. And again, this kind of, again, showcases toxic relationships, the dangers of academia, all that dark side. But it was just so interesting. Like I said, this one was really great. My husband, who was then my fiance at the time, read this as well, and he really enjoyed it. But yeah, I think it's so interesting. There is some Shakespeare in here, and I'm not a big Shakespeare person, but they do have like the pretentiousness of talking to each other in Shakespeare quotes. So just that's something to be aware of, because like I said, I'm not a big fan of Shakespeare, but I did really enjoy this. I just thought it was so interesting, and just kind of, you know, figuring out the pieces of what eventually, like why this character was the one who ended up in prison, and trying to figure out, you know, what happened, you know, what actually happened that night that kind of led to this fallout with this group. It's really well done, and like I said, it deserves all the hype it's been getting online as well. This one too, with The Secret History, those are books that I think the hype online is warranted. So that is it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below what some of your kind of favorite back to school reads are, and all of that fun stuff. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.